This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, the Citizen and Reporter, with you, with Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalism in the city of White Plains. And Jim, the headlines of the week, a slow news week.
And here are the news headlines of the week for White Plains Week of August 16th, 2019. White Plains schools start early this year, the day after Labor Day. State Education Department promises 2019 assessment tests about August 22nd or slightly thereafter. County police arrest 5, charge them with identity theft fraud in Westchester, New York City, and Long Island. Bungie departs 50 Main Street. Magnotta's Restaurant, which began business at 194 Maple Avenue in White Plains, to close this weekend as Angelo Magnotta retires. County announces Veterans Outreach Initiative.
Thank you, Jim. And now we go to the White Plains Week video newsreel. March of time for August the 16th, and you're looking at Magnotta's Restaurant, where you can get anything you want. And Magnotta's Restaurant announced it was closing last week, effective this Sunday, August the 18th. They are the official pizza provider of the White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and then this Sunday and Saturday and tonight, Friday night, is your last 3 days to get that taste of Magnotta's Pizza. And we also had news from the Westchester County Business Journal reporting that the Bungie is leaving 50 Main Street. Here's a shot of the financial center, which is going to be developed by Ginsberg Development Corporation. And according to Mr. Katz, the Bunge is going to leave White Plains. They have the first 3 floors of the building, and they employ about 150 people. So there is something to think about. They apparently are going to renovate those first 3 floors into better quarters, but this is disturbing, because once you start to develop, things change. Right, and there are other unintended consequences. We don't know what they might be. But this got me to thinking, Jim, of what the new Common Council will be facing when whoever is elected in November will be facing this January when they take office. And so I put on my thinking cap, and I considered some of the things that are happening in White Plains that the council and the administration need to be aware of. Let's take a look at the slide. There we are, the next 15 months. And these are 16 items that intrigue me. It is a shot of White Plains in the background from the air and the airport in the foreground. But this is what is going to affect the city, in my opinion. I feel, that the city has to do a better job of marketing the city, really be out front, develop a campaign. I feel that we have a lot to offer as a city, and they have to start proselytizing about the merits of the easy White Plains commute, among other things, and being the first to, sign up for the new apartments that have yet to be built, things like that. And then they have to really start working with these developers who apparently are having problems getting financing for several sites in the city. White Plains Mall comes to mind, and we lost the DMV. We're going to lose the DMV out of that this month, and DMV is not going to move into the Barker Avenue. I mean, the DMV is a huge draw during the week of people coming into town. So, could we keep the slide up? The business pullout in the downtown is another issue. You would mention to me that there are restaurants that are
Well,
closing.
it's really interesting. I have noticed recently that quite a few, when I say quite a few, I know 3 or 4 offhand. Tig's Tavern closed. That's next to the post office on Martine. Brother Jimmy's, which is on Mamaroneck Avenue,
Yes.
closed. And now we have Magnotta's closing. And Sofrito.
Sofrito was a big loss. That was a Main Street
Yeah.
upscale restaurant.
Now, I do think, talking about food and whatnot, White Plains needs a diner in the downtown area. I think,
In the center of the downtown.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the center.
Could be.
I think something like that would do very well.
Yeah, which goes to my next point. We can go back to the big laundry list here. The business pullout and downtown transparency. What I mean by that is Peter Katz for the Business Journal did an interesting interview with the city about what they are doing with the requests for proposals for the transit area. And apparently they're awaiting the turn-in of what the suggestions developers are going to make based on the rather nebulous, suggestions the city has made. But that's not going to happen for about a year for them to make a decision, which is interesting. That's another year down the drain. They've been talking about this transit development for some time.
Yeah.
And they have to be a lot more transparent than they're being. And otherwise, nobody's going to know what's really wanted, unless they've already picked who's going to develop it, which I wouldn't be surprised at. But now, assessment stalling. The assessments in White Plains just broke even this year. And it concerns me that with basically flat real estate prices and realtors constantly telling people, well, if you want to get your price and sell this, you have to drop your price. That's not good.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And that has to be stopped.
Well,
I don't know how you do that.
getting into this is not exactly about assessments, but I think that there has been way too much proposed housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these big mammoth jobs where they're putting 700 or 800 units, that's what's been proposed at the White Plains Mall. It's been proposed at the Pavilion site, and it's been proposed, I think it's somewhat smaller on the Mamaroneck Avenue and Post Road site. But the other thing is this worship of the millennium generation in going to fill up the housing, I think is aggravated nonsense. I think
Could we have a repeat of those words?
aggravated nonsense.
I see. Okay, fine. I just want to get that set.
Well, they need to build some bigger apartment units for people in my age category who want to downsize, and you're not going to go from a 3 or 5 bedroom house into a two-bedroom apartment just doesn't work.
No.
They've got to build some apartments which have 3 or 4 bedrooms, and there are some of the older World War II buildings that may have apartments that size, but they've got to build some more, and they've got to stop building tiny rooms.
Tiny little boxes. We can see that in the fact they haven't started the second Bank Street building.
Yeah.
55 Bank. I mean, there has to be a reason for that.
Yeah,
Other than just financing.
I am sure that they are not renting up as fast as they wanted to in the first
Well,
building.
of course, you will never find that out, but because there's no such thing as bad news in development, is there?
Well, I think that there should be a law that they have to publish what capacity they've reached.
Would be nice.
And that'll help with whether you build new stuff or whatever. And also, they've got to pay more attention to the amount of rent. In other words, we may be better off building affordable housing.
We might be. But this is demographics and marketplace, which doesn't appear to be paid much attention to.
Yeah.
And I think the new Common Council has to start asking questions, and they're all going to be smart people who go onto that Common Council starting in January, and you have to use your brains and say, if this doesn't sound right, say it doesn't sound right. That'll be the day, but we can always hope. Right? Now, back to the laundry list once again. Okay. You have to look at the tepid sales tax. I mean, we just broke even in sales tax compared to last year after another terrific June coming out of nowhere. And the tepid sales tax is a problem, and the reason it's tepid is it's not matching the inflation rate at all.
Well, I think also that retail store selling has become tough because of the internet, and I don't know how much taxes we're getting from the internet now. I don't understand how that sales tax is working. They charge it, they don't charge it, or what?
Who gets it? Who sends it to us? I mean, the whole sales tax distribution thing has been something that Eileen Earle, who has looked at city budgets and been responsible for them for years, is very concerned about, because the city cannot see what's making it money. It's money from the sales tax. They can't figure out what works and what doesn't. Now, housing inventory, a big problem in White Plains.
I've already said I think that we approved too much housing, and I think these huge projects, whether they were talking about at the Pavilion site, 750 units or something like that. That's not, if White Plains was a city of 500,000 people, I'd say, okay, do it. But it's not.
It's not.
And it's nowhere near getting to there. I just think that they're approving too big of projects, and
I mean, what do we got? We got the West White Plains Pavilion Hole, which is now developing notoriety as the new hole in, what did we used to call it? The hole in the ground?
something
back
like
at the old train station. Okay, back to the slide again. Sorry about this, but this is now the city has to really consider attractions. I mean, we have to really figure out whether the events that have been staged by the bid are really working, you know, and how have they worked, and do we need to do more of them? And that means you've got to promote better.
Yeah.
You've got to promote them better. And demographic expertise is another thing. They have to figure out who's living in White Plains and who could live here in White Plains. And your point, very well accepted about housing for older people who are not disabled, who do not need assistance, but who are fully functional and have a lifestyle that they want to keep up. And nobody has built things like that. No one. It's always the millenniums. Parking experimentation. That's another thing the council has to look at. The parking is killing us, folks. People don't come to White Plains because of the parking fear.
Well, not only the parking fear,
Yeah.
they took away a lot of on-street parking
Yeah.
years ago, and it was supposed to be taken away with some of the urban renewal programs.
Yeah.
And now they've put it all back. So they put a parking space every place they can think of.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not
People
not
don't like to
effective.
look at parking lots. That's why they're all underground in New York City.
Well, we need to have more parking structures, either underground or above ground. But you've got to get the cars.
And
The ideal thing is to have no on-street parking at all, and people will.
And
scream
speaking
when I
of
say
the
that, but-
transit center, how are they going to provide the parking for all these millennials who are supposedly going to commute? I cannot understand how they're going to increase the parking to double the size of the present garage. I don't understand that, because that's what they're going to have to do if their plans are correct. Back to the slide once more, and we'll wrap this up shortly. We have the ghost downtown. You know, until these spaces start getting built, it looks as if nothing is happening. And
Well, one of the things you've got to do,
yeah,
and then they'll just love my saying this, but the planning department has to keep track of the kinds of businesses that are here. And we should be getting statistics on the volumes that they're doing. In other words, if there's 5 men's clothing stores, you don't want another men's clothing store coming in. So what they would be able to do is say, we've got this many women's clothing stores, this many men's clothing stores, this many restaurants. We need this, we need that.
right to Eileen Earl's point that I mentioned earlier.
And, you know, this business of a guy coming in, oh, I'm going to build, you know, he really hasn't studied it.
You know, considering what has happened, that I mean, New Rochelle has all these approvals that they're building these places, and we are going to see how that works because they're ahead of us. Back to the slide, and we'll wrap this up. You have to perhaps consider buying out FASNY to put that to bed. You know, city can buy that property from them, make FASNY whole, and then we have a great attraction to play with. But that would end that problem once and for all. And also, I want the council, when they come in after being elected in November, they have to make sure White Plains avoids revaluation, which will devastate the taxpayers of White Plains. But this is another suggestion that politicians keep making, and they're stupid to do it because it is not in the best interest of the taxpayer. The city has to face competition. They have to say why we're better than New Row, why we're better than Yonkers, why we're better than Stamford, and do it in a really great campaign. I don't know how they do that, but they have to pick a real professional to do it because we are languishing. We don't have that cachet. And now the traffic, managing the building of all this construction is going to be really tough, and that we have to really think that out. Have they? And then finally, the airport. George Latimer, the county executive, does not want to expand that airport, and however, this really hurts White Plains because what that airport needs is an expansion of the opportunities to bring people in to the White Plains area for that, for a hotel. They need a hotel at that airport, and you know, a real good one. And if they don't do that, it's crazy. And they also, I say, another runway to handle international flights. Forget the Stewart Airport pipe dream. Nobody wants to go up there. They've tried that a number of times. So anyway, Have you taken notes, council people, to be or not to be? Have you taken notes? These are the issues that everybody should be discussing this fall, and everybody's sort of taken it off the last 2 months. I haven't heard any political activity at all. So it's about time to start thinking. Right, folks? Now, last week we talked to you about the school education department not having the assessment results ready. And so we spoke to the state education department. There's a picture of their building up in Albany, burning the midnight oil, rushing those results. But anyway, I spoke with the department, and they told me that the assessments will be released later this summer on a similar timeline to the 2017 release, which was done on August 22nd. So that means by next Thursday we might see them, but the spokesperson could not give us a date. Come on, you got to have some sort of target. This is really an amateur operation up there at the SED. I'm sorry, because as we have learned, the school districts cannot use the assessments in a meaningful manner if they don't get the results before they plan what they're going to do the next year. They just can't. And now, another thing that they said was that we are looking at hiring a search firm to assist the State Education Department Board in finding candidates for the new Commissioner of Education. A search. Well, man, where does that leave leadership of the department, which, I'm sorry, is in disarray. They can't execute. And what they're going to do on July 16th, 2019, Chancellor Rosa and Vice Chancellor Brown announced they would take a more active role in the activities of the department. Well, it's about time. And the Executive Deputy Commissioner, Beth Berlin, will serve as acting commissioner effective September the 1st. But really, not having somebody in place and going through an exhaustive national search for somebody who does not know New York and New York's problems is a joke. You have to have somebody from New York and to understand the unique position. New York probably has the best education in the country. Wouldn't you say that? And we don't want somebody coming in who's an amateur, you know. And really, the previous commissioner, who just recently abruptly resigned, really just put a lid on and smoothed this over, and these assessments are a problem. We're trying to find out who really decides what these tests are like, because if they go up, we'll see. Only 45% passed ELA last year with the new tests. That's unacceptable. You've got to get that up to 55% or 60%. Now, you can't do that by just fudging numbers. You just can't do it. And now, credit card fraud reared its ugly head. The county police cracked open a fraud ring that was operating in various stores around the metropolitan area. They had gotten away with at least $500,000 in merchandise, and it was discovered by the TJ Maxx organization that certain new accounts that were used to purchase items in the stores would rapidly max out. You know, it's their credit line, even though they were new cards. And that was how they were tracked down. They arrested 5 persons. But this identity theft thing is something that retailers everywhere should be really concerned about. And they are trying, the investigation is continuing, but a tip of the hat to the county police identity theft unit. They cracked this case in 5 months. That's fast. A lot of work in 5 months. Remarkable work. Now, the veterans are going to get more information. George Latimer here got a press conference with Ron Toshi in the gray jacket on the right. saying that they were going to be setting up Veterans Days and do a reach out initiative to veterans. And I'm telling you, information is the key. You have to identify your veterans and send them routine mailings or whatever, and have to do a lot more analysis of individual veterans' needs. Just as every teacher knows, you have to work with a teacher, with a pupil that's struggling in your classes, one-on-one. You have to make the effort, show an interest. And if more organizations showed that type of interest in the individuals they care for, they would be better off, and we would feel much better about the agencies. One thing about George Latimer, he holds a lot of press conferences, but he is setting up a lot of initiatives which are sort of identifying problems. Hopefully, execution will be as good as the presentation. That's the important thing, execution. It's not what you say, it's what you do, right? And now, Magnotta's Restaurant, which began business at 193, 194 Maple Avenue 47 years ago, is to close this weekend, as Angelo Magnotta, the man who founded the business, lower left, is retiring. And that's our last combo that we got, that delivered to the Citizen Reporter headquarters, and it was fantastic. You will now have lighter, more presentable crust than a Magnotta's pizza. Everything is thoroughly cooked, quite warm and not burned, and it's separated beautifully, so nothing, and it doesn't stick to the top of the
Everybody should go to Magnotta's this weekend and just pizza them out.
Well, we'll see. And he makes, and you can see an interview I did with Angelo Magnotta and his son, Angelo Jr., on People Be Heard on the internet at wpcommunitymedia.org, or on Saturday night at 7. And it was a fun interview, and right from the restaurant, and I recommend it. And you'll learn a lot about the pizza business and how he got it started. He'll tell you his secret ingredient for that pizza. And finally, I just want to mention the Herb Schnitzer exhibit at the Hudson River Museum. If we have that slide, please. And it's a photographic exhibit. It closes this Sunday, and it is viewable on Saturday, 12 to 5, and Sunday, 12 to 5. And it's photographs of New York in the 1950s and 40s and 60s, and it's truly works of art. That's Nina Simone in the upper left-hand corner, the great jazz singer. Well, that's it. I think we've said enough today, right? Yeah. John Bailey, Jim Benerofe saying good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week. News and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.